What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Ad Podcast. I'm here with Swapnil, who is the co-president of Attention Arc within the Chael Network, and we are here at their beautiful Skyline Manhattan office in Upper East Side. What's going on, man? Appreciate you coming on.
Doing well. Glad you're able to make it into New York.
Yeah, let's go. So, for those who aren't familiar with you, maybe you could give us a little bit about your background. I know you spent a lot of time at some pretty formidable shops in your early career, like Crispin Porter Bagasse, but you want to tell people a little bit about your origin story? Where'd you study? Where'd you grow up? And what got you into the media and advertising world?
Yeah, so it's interesting. The backstory here is it was an ad that I saw that made me think about this industry and this business. I went to school at the University of Michigan, graduated during the year of 9/11, where a lot of people were in the previous .com boom era thinking about which offer to take. I was trying to figure out which job to have. And after I graduated, I didn't have a job, but in my final semester, I saw a commercial from MasterCard that was about like a kid on a bus looking for a job, and it was like internship at mother's father's bank, $5.50 an hour, internship at uncle's law firm, $6 an hour, blah blah blah, internship in the music industry, priceless.
Oh, I love that. That's
that's
clever.
Let me figure out how to apply for this thing. And so you were supposed to write a 150-word blurb, send it in. If you could start your own entertainment company, what would it be and how would it be different?
Wow, that's
and
really
I wrote
cool.
about a custom bobblehead doll making company that you could dress and make feel like your own person, and it would bounce to the song of your choice. And so I made a little MasterCard commercial at the end of it and sent that through and had no second thoughts about that. And I got a call in, April or so saying I got picked to be one of, 50 people to go to Nashville for a 5-week internship in the music industry.
Crazy.
You learned everything about entertainment law to music production. You sat with a band to write songs. The group was a group called Big and Rich. If you ever watched College Game Day, they
John
opened
Rich.
up John Rich. So we wrote songs with them. One of the groups wrote Save a Horse, Ride a Cowboy the following year. So that was like their whole big break.
So you literally winning a contest and a prompt got you into the advertising industry.
Yeah, that made me think about, instead of doing investment banking or consulting, like what would a career in something more fun where I can, this is the most dressed up I'll ever be. What would that be like?
I love it.
So yeah, that's how I got started. I started working in New York as an assistant planner at Lowe Worldwide. Lowe merged with a bunch of agencies during that time, and I was only there for a year or so, and went to Universal McCann. And then I got a job in Miami at CPB and was there for 8.5 years before I moved over to McKinney. And McKinney eventually, we took the media group out of that, combined it with another entity we acquired a year and a half ago, LWD, and that's how we formed Attention Arc.
Amazing. I love that story about the prompt, with the credit card company. One of the stories I tell often is when, kind of like when you go to South by Southwest, like to actually be paying attention to some of those activations, because people actually win those things.
Yeah.
Like I think so many times people think like, oh, you see a call to action from an advertisement or a contest, and you're like, why bother? I'm never going to win that. But the reality is somebody wins. So when I was at South by, I was just, sitting at a table for a second, just like getting my bearings, maybe trying to figure out where to go next. And I saw this like unmarked bottle of hot sauce sitting on the table, and it said, feeling spicy, snap a picture of this and tweet at this hashtag. And it was like nondescript. You couldn't tell what brand it was. And I was like, all right, I'll play along. So I did it. And then 2 days later, I got a DM from Capital One on Twitter.
Okay.
And it's like, congratulations, you've just won a dinner with Anthony Bourdain and 10 people at South by Southwest. Yeah, so I got to go before Anthony Bourdain sadly passed away. Got to go to a 10-person dinner with him at South by as this Capital One activation. And I think the lesson is from both of our stories is people actually win things. So don't forget to actually, dial into some of these call to action sometimes. But that's awesome. So, obviously with Chael supporting Samsung globally, but, all of the different agencies that you guys have built around that client centrally. But what is kind of the current state of like the holding company that you guys are building. You've got media, you've got creative, you've got production, and then these 3 creative agencies. So what is the mix kind of bring to the table, would you say?
Yeah, so I mean, within the Chail Agency network, there's a handful of creative agencies: McKinney, Iris, Barbarian, Cylinder Studios is the production arm, and Attention Arc is the media entity. I think for the right client to be able to have access to all of those capabilities in a network that's the size of ours, where you're big enough to, have a seat at the table in the industry, but you're the right size to create the level of attention needed to service, mid-market clients is really an interesting opportunity. It's almost like the Goldilocks of networks. You have, a lot of things happening at the largest of holdcos, and there's plenty of resources, but there's also plenty of distractions in many ways. And,
so mid-sized clients can kind of get lost in that mix.
Yeah, and if you're, if you're client number 42 on a 60 client roster at a large holdco, do you feel like you're getting the sophistication, the talent, and the performance you want, or do you want to go somewhere else where you matter, a bit more, and then all that talent, attention, and sophistication leads to the performance you need for your business. So that's really the opportunity: is how do we live into that middle ground there?
I love it.
On YouTube, finding the right audience to build a media plan requires hours of research. And optimizing campaigns is time-consuming and a bit of a guessing game. That's why we built technology to do it for you. Strike Social.
So one of the things I noticed on your background, obviously working with the Domino's business at CPB, a lot of people talk about Domino's being a technology company that actually sold pizza, and a breakthrough. If you think about like delivery and apps and just the amount of obsession that they spent on user experience and speed. Be curious of what it was like to kind of be at the early days of like, apps and delivery, and the fact that most people don't even walk into Domino's anymore. It's like almost entirely a delivery business, but they were early to that trend. What was it like kind of being there for the transformation, the digital transformation of that business? Yeah,
in many ways you feel like a dinosaur because you reflect back. I mean, the first thing that came to my mind is we were one of the first entities to create an interactive order, and that was done in partnership with TiVo. We basically allowed people to order online on their TV at a time where that wasn't as easy. And you can imagine punching in your name, credit card information. Now you just scan a QR code, and it's like so much easier. So to go from that to kind of continuing to push the the bar on what seamlessness and frictionlessness means, is really powerful for what it did for consumers. But at the core were really simple insights. If you don't know what's happening behind the curtain, you're not happy. You're more likely to be frustrated. So something like the pizza tracker was the first foray into changing that perception. Yeah, it almost led the pathway to like apps like Uber. The thing where you can kind of track your progress. Yeah. You always feel whether it's getting your Amazon package in 2 hours or whether it's waiting for your Uber driver, everybody has this expectation that the app will give them an immediate feedback signal, and they'll tell you exactly where you are. They'll locate you in the purchase journey. That was kind of an early insight for them. Because back then it was like, now that's the expectation. The cable company is giving you this like 4-hour window, and they're going to be somewhere with it. And now the expectation is, where am I? And I need to know. And so you have to adjust with those times. And that was a 15 to 18 year period where that's become like the expectation. Yeah, now you get 50 emails from UPS, and you appreciate each one of them because it tells you where you are in the step and where you are in your delivery journey. Yeah, but that like started with the importance of being immersed in your client's business. So anyone that started on that brand back then went through pizza prep school. So we did a 3-day pizza prep school in Ann Arbor. Go Blue. Let's go. You went through and you experienced what it was like to basically take an order, to make the pizza, to deliver it, and by doing that, you could come up with ideas like, you saw that when an order came in, it went on this screen. When it moved from the make line to the oven, it went on this screen, and then when it got done with the oven and got boxed, it went on this screen. And the thought was like, well, why don't we just make that transparent and public facing because you have all this information. So
the data's already there. Yeah,
exactly. And
just
so
really just upend that for the consumer, so they know where they are in the process.
Yeah, and the operations can lead to an idea, but the idea can also, help the operations, because now you can manage, your order flow, your employee staffing, all that sort of stuff can be done much more seamlessly and proactively. And then there were details like, oh, well, these orders were generating a higher upsell themselves because nobody is asking you to buy something. You're like, oh, I'll add this on, and you would naturally add on a soda or something else, and you're basically, creating more profit for the entity by just creating that frictionless experience.
Yeah, reminds me of the David Ogilvy story where he went into, I think it was Rolls-Royce, and he was kind of tasked with like revamping the Rolls-Royce brand. And instead of, spent some time obviously in the boardroom talking with the CEOs, but he wanted to get to the factory floor with the guys who made the cars as soon as possible. And they told a story about how like the clock ticked a certain way, kind of the way the Rolex does, like in a sweeping version. And that was like the insight for the campaign they ended up using. So I think it's important for, probably not enough marketers and advertisers spend time, they spend time with their clients, but maybe not sometimes with the front line, the people who actually interact with customers. And ultimately a brand that has any kind of retail presence or any time that you deal with a consumer, that's the product. The people are the product at the end of the day.
Definitely. Yep.
I love it. All right, so you mentioned Mirren's in town this week. You're headed over there tomorrow. What's kind of the current state of procurement? What do you think? Are procurement folks looking for, like in search consultancies or review processes? What types of things are people coming to you for pitches now? What has become table stakes and kind of the rush to AI and some of these things?
Yeah, I think there are a handful of things. One is more in-person meetings to understand, if you're going to be a partner. The chemistry test. You're going to be a partner with somebody, like where are the opportunities to really understand how they work, who they are, and can you go to them with the challenges that you and your company are working through? And so that's one portion. And I think where the source of the new business opportunity comes in is equally important. So you have consultants and procurement, and then you also have referrals. What's happening right now is we're seeing a higher, probably not unsurprisingly, a higher conversion with people that already have some awareness of what we're working like. So when we go and talk to them, the conversation.
You're not starting from scratch, essentially.
Exactly. The conversation is already starting at a further along point that they're looking to extract out what they need to know, and if we can help them in that process. Whereas if you're one of 10 in a potential partnership here, they're just learning about you or what you can do and how you're differentiated amongst a bunch of people. And at the end of the day, who doesn't have the technology? Who doesn't run media? Who doesn't have the people?
And a lot of people at this point are using AI to issue RFPs and respond to them. So it's like bots talking to bots during the pitch process. So it's almost, until you get in the room, it's almost irrelevant in a lot of ways.
It is, and so in some cases you have to think about the volume play, but do it efficiently where you're not burning out yourself and you're picking the right opportunities that have the right conditions for partnership. In other ways, you just need to continue to figure out where to cultivate like the closest in of things, so you turned your existing work as media for you to, or your existing clients as media for you to go and try to find the right next client.
Yeah, I love that. You've been a big proponent of the attention economy versus, media buyers being people who buy impressions. They're buying intent, or they're buying attention. How do you think the media landscape is evolving now with this idea that you originally conceptualized as buying intent or attention versus impressions? How do you think that philosophy is evolving in the current ecosystem?
Yeah, I think the way we're thinking about it is less from a measurement standpoint or associated with buying attention or buying intention. It's really
like OCRs and GDPs and kind of like trying to buy the volume of attention that we used to have a lot of metrics around.
Exactly.
TV
it's less that, and it's more the intention behind every decision that we make, and how do they feel that, because it won't show up on a dashboard. But when there's somebody thinking about all the small things and all the big things with a level of like intention, you're going to get to a different prompt and a different result, right? And so a perfect example I can throw out there for that is, it's not like technology that's making the difference, because you and I can have access to the same ChatGPT platform.
Yep.
What did you go in there wanting to do and achieve? And did you use that intention to generate something different than me? And if you did, and if you have a culture built around intention, where you have like a specific outcome in mind and the steps you need to get there, you're going to be able to get there differently than somebody else. And our core philosophy is this notion that media starts and ends with people. So whether it's clients, whether it's our people or consumers, getting to know them,
it's all human,
is at the crux of what we need to do. You know, there's a Bill Bernbach quote about, you know, the notion
famous
that
founder of DDB, for those that aren't familiar.
People have not changed over decades and centuries. Their motivations are still the same.
We still have a lot of lizard brain in us.
They're still the same motivations. It's just, do you connect with them and do you meet them in the right places with the right message? And that's why I think it's important for both the message and the medium to be thought about, because you can continue to optimize and whatnot, but you might not be then filling the funnel with future-facing consumers, right? So you
is that kind of the story of like performance versus brand? It seems like a lot of people are talking about the idea of they don't need to be disjoined. They can be one and the same, essentially. You can do media tactics that drive performance that also build brand at the same time.
Exactly, and what we're trying to do is how do we create a roof, and if you think of the roof as a tension arc, what we are is 50 to 60 people that came from the McKinney media side with more experience working on integrated accounts, and 100 plus people that came from the LWD side, where they're really, 30 plus years of performance metrics driving results for clients. So now if you can have that whole thing at one place, with the core being the activation group and the insights group that is feeding the information to the activation is being used for either performance needs or integrated needs, you are then thinking about it not as separate, but one and the same to achieve a need for this client or that client. Because sometimes performance clients need people that speak performance language, and sometimes integrated clients need comms planning and this and that. If you can have people doing all of that at one place, and you feel like you're the right size for that place where you're going to get the attention, that's what we mean by the type of environment we're creating.
Love it. I always wondered, being part of the vertical integration of Samsung, do you guys get any special access to Samsung TV data or ads? Is there a church and state separation, or is there, if Samsung as a channel is important to you, is there value there in that ownership structure?
We've certainly asked, but in this case, we're paying to get ACR data from Samsung, LG, Vizio, because
so there is kind of a traditional, church and state situation.
Because in some cases that's a separate division of an entity that's revenue generating. But in this case, what we have is that ACR data feeds our attribution model to be able to take what would have been linear and probabilistic and turning it into one-to-one deterministic matches within our attribution system. So taking the ACR data is really critical to feeding our thing. So whether we have to pay for it or not, if it generates better client intel and results, that's what matters.
Awesome. So, you mentioned prompting in an answer that we talked about a few minutes ago in response to ChatGPT. I feel like agentic is kind of the buzzword of this year. Are we getting close to, are you seeing partners, platforms, media buying opportunities? Is agentic becoming a part of the actual workflow yet? Or do you feel like that word is still kind of the continuation of like AI hype, at least for this year? Or are you seeing agentic working into actual workflows?
I mean, I'm sure it's going to become more and more prominent, even more than we're feeling today. We're taking a slightly different take on this, which is we want to continue to be adaptive because we don't know what works today and if it's going to be obsolete tomorrow. And so how do we figure out what aspects we need to build ourselves, what aspects we need to borrow and continue iterating versus going all in on something, and then who knows what happens, and then that makes that not the it thing of the moment, right? So is there value in a end-to-end system that's going to be fully automated at some point? On paper, sure, but there's also articles being written about things going wrong in that process. Where do you go all in, and how do you actually work your way in a curated manner on that is really the question that we're asking ourselves. And We're leaning more towards the let's build, let's assess, let's tinker, rebuild, and do that in a way that then shifts our focus to being synthesizers of the data and deliverers and communicators of it to clients. So the agentic stuff helps gather the data and bring it to us. We still have to synthesize it.
Interesting. So AI is essentially the Hoover vacuum that sucks up all the different points of data points and can coagulate endless reams of data, but at the end of the day, it's still human beings that are deriving the insights from whatever those prompts are, or whatever that, this idea of being like data ready, or can I talk to my data? It's the humans doing the talking.
Yeah, and it's intentional in the sense that in the past, more of our time was going to gathering and coagulating and whatnot, and now more of our time should be going to, does this make sense, first and foremost? If so, what might it mean, and what can I do with that? So that might open up a new targeting aspect to test, because you saw something in the data that said, oh, here's this product, and it's typically for this, this, and this, but we saw this other fringe thing that was popping. What if we got the right message to test for that, right? And so when we do that, it's either going to work or not, and so you can test, learn, and scale, and you're sort of de-risking what in the past you just had no visibility into because you're not able to process the volume of information. So we poured in live ramp data, Resonate data, MRI data, we look at Experian data. When you're looking at all that, what is worth doing something about is really what we're trying to get the humans to focus on.
Interesting. So you're trying to identify kind of spikes in attention or propensity, and then you can much faster spin up creative, do kind of a test to see if that's a applicable audience or something that's worth spending more time on.
Exactly.
Like you can do these faster iterative tests, essentially.
And the benefit of being part of the network with, insight all the way to optimization is if in a typical situation, a media entity is seeing opportunity, they're optimizing it for the media plan's benefit. What we want to do is take that and also feed it back up to the creatives to say, hey, this audience group or this line or this message or whatever was working, what might you do? And then if you go to a client and say, hey, we saw this working, we want to make this campaign out of it, that's what I mean by it being de-risked, because in the past, if you have two siloed entities, creative and media working on their own, nobody's really often connecting the two. They're doing it for their own need, and what we're trying to do is bring it back upstream to say, this is working, what else could we do with it?
Love it. What's keeping you up at night these days?
There's the way the business works is you always have to get your next client, because if you don't keep the business healthy with future clients, unfortunately doing the work, on existing ones is not enough, right? So it's the pressure on growth, and more so to be able to continue building the type of culture and environment we want to build, so that you're constantly more in control of where you're going as opposed to being reactive and defensive.
That makes sense. What are you most optimistic about for the future?
I'm very optimistic about the model and the need for humans to be the analogy I've been sharing in many ways. If you ever seen Avatar, and how you need to connect with the banshees, the banshees are like the technology. They're scary and they're like amazing, but you need to find a way to connect with that banshee. And when you do, you can soar and you can ride it. And so I feel like that's the perfect example of what we as humans need to do and how we can harness that technology. And so that vision, I feel like, can really play out and add benefit to clients. We just need to continue identifying the right talent to continue to bring on board, nurture internally, and how we can then go and do what's out there for the taking.
I love it. On the talent note, has the things that you look for in talent changed over the last year, or as AI has accelerated in the conversation so much? Is the skill set or the type of person that you look for to bring in, has that changed?
Yeah, in some ways it's different. It's usually it's helpful if people are already tinkerers and AI forward,
fluent, essentially.
Fluent forward. But the part that's not, I don't know that it's never been that it's always been important is this notion of, are you hungry? Are you driven? Are you motivated? Are you a problem solver?
Yeah.
And if you are, you're likely to already over-index on tinkering yourself and trying to figure out what to do.
Kind of goes hand
right?
in hand to some degree.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot different than back when, people were just asking, can I have a beer with this person? It's like, that's no longer, enough per se. It's like you need to figure out like who's wired to provide that type of intention that it takes to separate
Can't just be fun to hang out with.
from the pack. Yeah,
Love it.
and you want both because you want to enjoy doing what you're doing, but it's also that much more fun when you're building on things with one another.
EQ and IQ, essentially.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, Swap, thank you for spending a little bit of time with us today. If folks at home want to follow along with you or your thinking, where do you want to send people to stay in touch?
You're welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn, or if you want to email me, I'm at swap.patel